Fire your entire team by Monday or I'll do it for you, my husband, the new manager, demanded. I nodded quietly. What he didn't know, they weren't just my team. Monday morning, when the board walked in, his face went white because I should have known the evening was headed straight for the corporate version of hell. The second David placed a manila folder beside my plate like it was the main course, the way he slid it across the table, slow, deliberate, with that CEO smirk that could curdle milk, told me dinner wasn't about the food. It was about execution. My execution specifically. We were having grilled salmon, roasted asparagus, and marital tension. You could have cut it with a butter knife and still had leftovers. David took a sip of his wine, crossed one leg over the other, and said in his boardroom calm voice, "Fire your entire team by Monday or I'll do it for you." Now, for the record, I've heard some messed up dinner conversations in my life. Once, his cousin announced he was quitting his job to sell crystals to dogs. Another time, his dad told me my handshake was soft, like an indecisive pancake. But this was a new category of awkward. I nodded, the polite version of fainting, right? Okay. That was the sound of a woman trying to keep her soul from sprinting out the back door. Inside, I was doing mental yoga. Deep breaths. Don't flip the table. Don't remind him I hired half those people because he said you should find passionate, creative types. Don't ask how he became a self-appointed efficiency czar for the company we both technically worked for. Me in operations, him in strategic transformation, which, by the way, is corporate code for I make PowerPoints about firing people. David forked another piece of salmon, blissfully unaware. He'd just launched a small emotional grenade. "You've been too sentimental," he said. "You treat your team like a family." "Yeah," I muttered, "crazy concept? Humans being treated like humans?" He ignored the sarcasm, which honestly should be listed as one of his core skills. "They're not performing at optimal capacity," he continued. "You can't save everyone. Efficiency is leadership." I stared at the folder like it was radioactive. "And firing 8 people before Monday makes me efficient?" He dabbed his lips with a napkin, perfectly calm. "Decisive," he corrected. "It makes you decisive." I wanted to tell him decisive was ordering fries instead of a salad, not throwing your entire department into unemployment, but I kept that thought in my internal memo. My marriage had already survived 2 home renovations and 1 joint Google Calendar. I wasn't sure it could survive sarcasm about his new title. Still, I tried. "Man, these people aren't dead weight. They're the reason we didn't get sued last quarter when that fire alarm turned into a small volcano." He didn't even blink. "Then they've served their purpose." Served their purpose like they were old printer cartridges. My fork clinked against the plate. He didn't flinch. The man had the emotional range of a granite countertop. I looked at him across the table, the perfectly symmetrical hair, the designer shirt that probably cost more than Marcus's car. And I thought, this is what happens when you marry a man who reads business books for fun. "I'll need confirmation by Sunday," he added casually, sipping his Pinot like it was communion wine. I smiled, or at least my face made a shape similar to smiling. "Sure," I said, "I'll think about it." But we both knew I wouldn't. The rest of dinner was silence. Not the peaceful kind, like a Sunday morning with pancakes and soft jazz, but the kind that hums like a fluorescent light in a bad office. After dessert, or what would have been dessert if anyone still had an appetite, I cleared the plates. He opened his laptop at the table because of course he did. "Don't stay up late overthinking it," he said, already typing. "You'll feel better once it's done." Yeah, just like how people feel better after dental surgery. I walked into the living room, loosened my scarf, and stared at the city lights bleeding through the blinds. I could see our office building from here. 30 floors of glass, ambition, and unpaid overtime. Somewhere in that glowing box were the people he wanted me to fire. People who'd stuck with me through the messiest projects, broken code, late nights, and malfunctioning coffee machines that smelled like despair. They weren't just my team. They were the reason I still believe the company had a soul. Nina, the coder who listened to heavy metal while fixing bugs faster than most people could blink. Marcus, the designer who doodled his way into brilliance and called every finished layout his baby. Zara, the client manager who could talk a raging CEO into calm using nothing but empathy and a pen. David thought he was trimming fat. I thought he'd picked the wrong body. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our old team group chat, Special Solutions. The name started as a joke because our department was technically unofficial, a temporary task force that kept refusing to die. I typed out one word, green space. That was our code word. It meant emergency meeting, but it also meant bring snacks. This might suck. I added 7 p.m. tomorrow. Bring snacks. We might cry. Then I hit send. I spent the rest of the night pacing like a person preparing for trial. I'd seen David in work mode before, polished, terrifying, efficient, but this was something else. He'd gone full Thanos, except instead of snapping fingers, he was sending HR emails. By midnight, I'd opened the folder. Inside were performance graphs, salary reports, and a neat little summary titled Redundant Roles. Departmental Streamlining Proposal. Translation: 8 names, 8 pink slips, and 1 marriage on thin ice. I flipped through the pages, reading the bullet points that reduced real people to metrics. Low output, overlapping responsibilities, non-essential to core functions. Non-essential, right? Like water is non-essential to soup? The next morning, I dragged myself into the office running on caffeine and spite. The lobby smelled like corporate success and faint regret. Too much perfume, too much ambition. My reflection in the elevator doors looked like someone who'd just survived a motivational seminar. When I reached my floor, I could see them, my team, through the glass walls. Nina was bobbing her head to music that only she could hear. Marcus was arguing with Photoshop, and Zara was multitasking so fast she looked like she was auditioning for Cirque du Soleil. They waved when they saw me. I waved back, pretending everything was fine. Classic management move. But inside, my brain was a war zone. Half of me wanted to grab David's folder, march into HR, and light it on fire. The other half wanted to find a smarter way, something poetic, something satisfying. When lunch rolled around, Nina wandered into my office holding a donut like it was evidence. "You okay, boss? You've got that planning a coup face again." I chuckled. "What does that face look like?" "Like you're about to smile, but remembered you work here." She wasn't wrong. I waved her off. "Just thinking about efficiency." She rolled her eyes. "Ugh, the E word. David again?" I didn't answer, but she didn't need me to. Nina had a sixth sense for corporate nonsense. You tell him that without us, this company would still be sending invoices by carrier pigeon. "Noted," I said, trying not to grin. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I decided if David wanted a war of efficiency, I'd give him one. But it wouldn't be fought with layoffs or memos. It would be fought with something rarer in our building: truth. That night, I sat in my car outside Greenspace, the local park by the old coffee shop we used to haunt back when deadlines felt optional. I watched the sunset turn the sky, that tired office gray, into something human. My phone buzzed. One by one, the messages popped up. Nina got chips. Marcus got beer. Zara got backup emotional support tissues. Sam got receipts. Literal receipts. I exhaled. Yeah, these were my people. Tomorrow, I'd tell them everything about David's ultimatum, about the deadline, about the plan that was forming in the back of my caffeine-addled brain. But for now, I just sat there staring at the horizon and thinking about how marriages and companies both fall apart the same way. Quietly, over dinner, while someone passes the salt, I look down at the folder on my passenger seat. "Fire your entire team," it whispered in my head. I smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "Sure, honey," I said aloud, "but you first." And just like that, the idea took root, small, sharp, and utterly satisfying. Greenspace Park was where bad dates went to die and conspiracies went to be born. It was the kind of place where people did yoga in the grass while pretending not to judge anyone eating nachos. I was sitting on a bench under a lamppost that buzzed like a mosquito with anxiety, waiting for my team to arrive. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to ask them to help me save their jobs by technically pretending to lose them. You know, standard Thursday night stuff. One by one they appeared, looking like a ragtag band of office superheroes who'd gotten lost on the way to Comic-Con. Nina was first, hoodie pulled over her head, sunglasses on, carrying a tote bag labeled "Definitely Not a Laptop." She sat down beside me, tore open a bag of pretzels, and said, "So, boss, is this a meeting or an intervention?" "Bit of both," I said, "except the addiction is being employed." Next came Marcus, balancing 2 coffees in a 6-pack. "I brought courage," he said, nodding at the beer, "and caffeine for optimism." "God bless your Italian heart," I muttered. Zara showed up last, punctual as always, wearing that calm, crisis-ready expression that made clients feel safe and me feel like an underperforming intern. She took one look at my face and said, "David." I nodded. "David," she sighed, like she'd been expecting this day since the Renaissance. "What did he do?" "Wants me to fire everyone by Monday." The silence that followed could have powered the entire city grid. Then Nina swore softly in a way that would make an HR rep combust. Marcus dropped one of the coffees. Zara folded her arms like she was hugging an invisible baby made of stress. "He's serious?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Dead serious?" I said. He slid the folder across the dinner table like a dessert menu. "That's messed up," Nina said. "You guys don't even eat dessert." "Focus," I said, rubbing my temples. "We have a weekend to fix this before he does something irreversible." "So, Sam?" asked from behind us. I hadn't even noticed him arrive, because of course the accountant moves like a ghost. "What's the plan?" "Cry? Stage a coup? Fake our deaths?" "Option 4, I said. "All of the above, but legally." They gathered in a loose circle, beer cans popping open like punctuation marks in our collective panic. "I have a plan," I said. "It's complicated," Marcus groaned. "Every time you say that, we end up in a storage closet with 6 laptops, a pizza, and emotional trauma." "True," Nina said. "Remember the firewall project? Remember the time we almost got banned from using Slack?" I raised my hands. "Okay, yes, but this one's bigger and sneakier." They leaned in. The park lights flickered. A perfect cue for dramatic conspiracy energy. I took a deep breath. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make David think he's winning." Nina tilted her head. "As in, we just sit here and cry elegantly until he feels fulfilled?" "No," I said, "we act broken. Pack boxes, delete files, hand in access cards, play along. Every bit of corporate melodrama you can think of. Perform it like you're auditioning for The Office, Tragedy Edition." Marcus blinked. "You want us to fake being fired?" "Exactly. But behind the scenes, we'll document everything we've done. The projects, the results, the savings, every late-night fix. We'll create a report so detailed that even an AI accountant would cry reading it. We'll make it impossible for him to justify cutting us. And when the board sees it, they'll realize he's about to crash the company." Zara finished catching on fast. "Bingo," I said. Sam nodded slowly. "So, basically, we're staging a fake death to prove we're still alive?" "Pretty much." He cracked open another beer. "Cool. I've always wanted to be in a corporate zombie movie." Nina leaned back, pretending to think. "I don't know, boss. This sounds like a lot of emotional labor for people who are already underpaid." "Yeah," I said, "but at least you'll get to make David look stupid. Consider it performance art." That perked her right up. "Oh, I'm in. You had me at make David look stupid." "Same," Marcus added. "But what if this backfires? What if he actually fires us before we can pull this off? I shrugged. Then we go down swinging. And by swinging, I mean we leak the data to the board. Zara smirked. You thought this through. I smiled. It's either this or therapy. And therapy doesn't come with health insurance anymore. They all laughed. That tired, slightly manic laugh people do when they realize they're about to make bad life choices together. I stood up, brushing off my jeans. We'll start tomorrow. Pack your things. Cry convincingly. Make it look like a disaster. But behind the tears, keep working quietly, efficiently. We'll pull every number, chart, and email we need. This is our heist. Nina pointed at me with a pretzel. You know, you're basically describing an Ocean's 11 sequel no one asked for, right? Yeah, I said. Ocean's 8. Sam raised his can to the saddest heist in corporate history. We clinked beers and the sound felt both ridiculous and heroic. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The breeze rustled the trees and the park lights hummed in rhythm with our collective anxiety. Then Zara broke the silence. You realize he's not just doing this for efficiency, right? I turned to her. Meaning he's angling for something bigger. People don't make enemies out of whole teams unless they're trying to make a point. I sighed. You think he's going for Charles's job or the board's attention? Zara said. Either way, he's not going to stop until he looks like the savior of the company. Then we just have to beat him at his own story, I said. Nina grinned. Plot twist. We're the heroes. Exactly. Marcus groaned, dramatic as always. Great. So, we're underpaid, overworked, and now we have to act. I didn't sign up for method unemployment. Relax, I said. You'll be fine. Just look sad, type fast, and don't get caught smiling. He gave a mock salute. Aye, Captain. We stayed in the park longer than planned, mapping out details like criminals who didn't realize they were the good guys. Sam would track the finances. Zara would compile client testimonials. Nina and Marcus would gather design and code metrics, and I'd assemble the grand narrative. The story that would prove David's plan wasn't efficiency. It was corporate self-sabotage with better lighting. At one point, a jogger slowed down and said, "You guys look intense." "We're planning a revolution," Nina said, deadpan. The jogger blinked. "Cool," he said, jogging off faster than before. We all cracked up. By 9 p.m., the group started dispersing. Marcus headed to the train. Nina waved with her pretzel bag like a flag. And Sam muttered something about pivot tables before vanishing into the night like an Excel ghost. Zara lingered. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Nope," I said. "But it beats letting him win." She nodded, thoughtful. "You know he'll make it personal, right?" "He already did." "Still," she said softly, "be careful. You're his wife, but that doesn't make you untouchable." "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "I've noticed." She gave my shoulder a squeeze before walking away. Her heels clicked against the pavement, fading into the kind of silence that leaves you alone with your thoughts, and those thoughts are never kind. I sat back down on the bench, staring at the lamppost light flickering above me. The buzzing matched the static in my head. Somewhere between the sarcasm and the strategy, I realized how insane this all was. A husband and wife locked in an office Cold War. He wanted to prove efficiency. I wanted to prove humanity. Both of us wanted to be right. The thing about working in corporate America is that it trains you to smile while you're drowning. You master the art of cheerful self-preservation. Tonight, though, something shifted. This wasn't just about saving jobs anymore. It was about proving that people still mattered more than charts. My phone buzzed. A message from David. "Don't forget to confirm terminations by end of day Sunday. I'll handle communication with HR if you're too busy." Too busy, right? Like being emotionally blackmailed over dinner counts as busy? I typed back, "All under control." Then, after a moment, I added a period. That one extra dot of passive-aggressive punctuation. I leaned back and looked at the park again. The benches, the trees, the flickering lights. And for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. Terrified, yes, but alive. We had a weekend to pull off the most ridiculous act of rebellion this company had ever seen. And maybe, just maybe, we'd remind everyone, including David, that efficiency means nothing without the people who make the damn system work. The night breeze carried the faint smell of popcorn from a nearby vendor. I bought a bag, sat back down, and toasted it to the invisible skyline. "To teams who don't go quietly," I said under my breath, and the lamppost buzzed back like it agreed. If you told me 5 years ago that I'd become the invisible person in my own company, I would have laughed, adjusted my blazer, and asked if you needed coffee or therapy. But here we are. Somewhere between being the dependable person with a color-coded calendar and the one who fixes office problems no one else even sees, I became the ghost people accidentally email when they're talking trash about management. And somehow I'm fine with that. See, invisibility has perks. You get to observe. And when you observe long enough in corporate America, you start to see patterns like who actually runs things. Spoiler, it's never the people in corner offices, or how meetings could have been emails, but are instead emotional marathons with PowerPoint visuals. Back when I started, I was the organized one. You know the type, the person who brings extra pens, knows where the coffee filters are, and remembers Brenda's cat's name because Brenda once cried during a quarterly review. People said things like, "You're so reliable," which is code for, "We're going to dump all our panic on you when this project explodes." Then came the quarter from hell. Charles, the CEO, had just fired half of middle management in a move he called lean restructuring. Lean my ass. We were so lean we could have fit inside a shoebox. The company was bleeding clients and morale faster than HR could schedule resilience workshops. Charles gathered the remaining staff and said the words that should be printed on every corporate tombstone. "We just need to work smarter." He looked at me, the invisible person, and said, "You're good with systems. Fix it." "Fix what exactly?" I asked. He waved his hand. "All of it? Oh, sure, just all of it. No biggie." I could have said no, but I had that early career optimism where you think effort equals reward and loyalty equals security. Rookie mistake. Instead, I asked for a small team and an unused storage room because that's what you do when you're trying to fix chaos. You hide from it. He gave me both, probably figured it was cheaper than a therapist. That's how Special Solutions started. 1 broken coffee maker, 2 flickering lights, and 8 people who were too stubborn to quit. Nina came first. She was an IT rebel who spoke fluent sarcasm and wrote code like she was exorcising demons. Her emails usually included at least one meme and ended with, "Please fix your own mistakes, KTHX." HR didn't like her. I adored her. Then Marcus showed up. Graphic designer, dress shirts unbuttoned too low, confidence levels too high. The man could design an interface so intuitive it made you feel stupid for not thinking of it first. He once said, "Design is about emotion," which sounded pretentious, but then he fixed our entire client dashboard in 2 days, so we forgave him. Zara was the last to join. Client manager, sweet voice, lethal memory. She could recall every angry client from the last 5 years like she kept them in a mental Rolodex. Her job was to calm people down before they called their lawyers. Honestly, she deserved hazard pay. We became the company's emergency plumbers, the people they called when something exploded, figuratively or literally. One time, the fire alarm malfunctioned and sprayed foam instead of sound. We fixed it. Another time, the new software release deleted customer payment histories. We rebuilt it from backups. Every crisis had our fingerprints on the solution, but we didn't brag. That's the thing about quiet workers. We build, others get the credit, which is fine until someone like David shows up. Now, back then, David wasn't the efficiency czar. He was just my boyfriend who occasionally wore blazers for fun. He worked at another firm, all finance and strategy, and our biggest argument was about which coffee shop had the superior cold brew. When he joined our company a few years later, I thought it'd be cool. Married power couple, same workplace, same dreams. I even pictured us high-fiving in the hallway after saving the company from disaster. You know, corporate romance with spreadsheets. Instead, what I got was a masterclass in stealth survival. When David started his efficiency crusade, I didn't panic. I figured he'd poke around, trim some budgets, maybe eliminate that weird middle layer of people whose entire job is replying all. But no, he went full Marie Kondo on human beings. At first, I tried to reason with him. Hey babe, maybe don't call my department redundant in front of HR. He'd smile sweetly and say, "It's not personal, darling, it's strategic." That's when I knew I was dealing with two Davids, the one who kissed me goodnight and the one who plotted staffing reductions like a Bond villain with a spreadsheet fetish. So I learned stealth. If he was going to live in the spotlight, I'd master the shadows. If he wanted numbers, I'd show results that numbers couldn't argue with, and I'd do it quietly. Invisibility training. Day 1. Stop talking in meetings. Just listen. Let the executives argue over buzzwords like synergy and growth trajectory. Meanwhile, you take notes on what they actually need, not what they say they need. Then you solve it before they notice. Day 2. Make yourself boring, unthreatening. Wear neutral shirts. Smile politely. Be forgettable. People don't target what they don't see. By month 6, I perfected the art. My team and I existed in the blind spot of the company. We fixed, we built, we prevented disasters, and every once in a while someone upstairs would say, "Didn't we already solve that issue?" Yep, we did. You're welcome. Charles knew what we were worth. That's why he left us alone. He wasn't the touchy-feely type, but he understood value, and we were quietly printing it. Still, success doesn't stay invisible forever. One Tuesday, Charles called me into his office, a place that smelled like expensive pens and quiet dread. He gestured for me to sit, looking over a pile of reports like he was reading tarot cards. "Your team," he said, "has saved us more money than our sales division made last quarter." I blinked. "Is that good or bad?" He smirked. "Depends who you ask." He leaned forward. "I'm promoting you to operations manager. You'll have a bigger budget, more oversight, and unfortunately, more meetings." "Meetings?" I said. "The corporate afterlife." He laughed. "Keep doing what you're doing, but from a higher chair." I walked out feeling 10 feet tall. Then I made the rookie mistake of telling David. That's when things got complicated.
David congratulated me with champagne and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "That's wonderful," he said. "Now we can finally work closer." Closer. That word aged poorly. Within a few months, he'd been promoted to head of efficiency and strategic realignment. I'm not saying he lobbied for it, but let's just say he advised Charles a lot on what the company needed. Our marriage turned into a merger. Meetings about meetings, shared Google Docs, and dinner conversations that felt like performance reviews. He'd say things like, "We need to improve synergy between departments," and I'd say, "We need to improve synergy between us." He didn't laugh. Our house filled up with buzzwords: optimization, lean methodology, cross-functionality. I swear one night I woke up to him mumbling quarterly deliverables in his sleep. And through it all, I stayed invisible. Not because I wanted to, but because it kept me alive. Whenever he started digging into departmental performance, I'd subtly redirect him. "You should look at marketing," I'd say. "They love efficiency reports." He'd nod, dive into marketing like a shark, and I'd have a few weeks of peace. It became a dance. His audits, my evasions, his spreadsheets, my countermetrics. And weirdly, it worked. We balanced each other. His spotlight, my shadows. Until recently, until the dinner that night at Greenspace Park, when I told my team about the ultimatum, I realized how deep this invisible person thing had gone. They trusted me because I'd always been the calm in the storm, the one who saw the chaos but never flinched. But I also realized I'd built a system that depended entirely on staying unseen. And now David had dragged me right into the light. He wanted me to fire the people who made me invisible in the first place. The same people who fixed problems so management forgot they existed. And that wasn't just cruel, it was stupid. See, companies don't survive on leadership speeches. They survive on the quiet folks, the coders, designers, communicators, and accountants who show up every day, solve problems, and get zero credit. The invisible ones. I thought about all the years of late-night fixes, pizza-fueled weekends, and quick updates that turned into 10-hour marathons. About how my team and I kept this company alive without fanfare or fame. And suddenly, I wasn't just angry, I was motivated. If David wanted to expose us, fine, I'd let him. But he'd regret thinking visibility equals control. Because being invisible doesn't mean powerless. It means patient, strategic, ready. I left work that night later than usual. The janitor waved. I waved back. He said, "Burning the midnight oil again?" I smiled. "Nah, just learning how to disappear and reappear at the right time." He chuckled. "Stealth training, huh?" Exactly. And for the first time in years, I felt like being invisible wasn't a weakness. It was my weapon.
There are managers, and then there's David, my husband, my boss, and apparently the reincarnation of every corporate buzzword ever invented. When he became the company's new efficiency lead, people expected innovation. What they got was a man who could smell wasted potential from a mile away and had no problem labeling it redundant. His first day on the job, he walked into headquarters like he was there to bless the building. Hair perfect, shoes clicking with the confidence of someone who'd already memorized the floor plan and everyone's salary. HR introduced him to the staff, and he smiled that charming, camera-ready smile that said, "I will destroy you, but politely." Efficiency, he began, standing at the front of the conference room like he was about to announce a war strategy, is a muscle. Everyone nodded, pretending to understand. I sat in the back, coffee in hand, wondering if he knew he'd just declared himself the corporate gym trainer from hell. Then he added, "And I'm here to make sure we flex it." I nearly choked on my coffee. When you're married to someone like David, you learn to read him like a stock chart. Small uptick, he's proud. Sudden drop, he's furious. That first week, the line was climbing fast. He'd printed new posters with motivational quotes like, "Trim the excess, keep the best." You know, like a hedge trimmer slogan, but with fonts that screamed PowerPoint enthusiasm. To him, numbers were people, and people were just line items that talked too much. He didn't visit our department, of course. We worked 2 floors below him in what used to be a storage space, and David didn't do storage spaces. His natural habitat was the executive wing, bright lights, scented air diffusers, and enough glass to reflect his own confidence from 12 different angles. He reviewed reports through his tablet like a judge reading guilty verdicts. If a department had more than 3 employees or used words like collaboration or process time, he flagged it for assessment. Translation: someone was getting the axe before lunch. I remember overhearing him in a meeting one day. The wall was thin enough that his voice carried down the hall. "There's too much overlap in operations," he said. "We need to cut inefficiency by 30% this quarter." Someone, probably an intern, asked timidly, "Won't that affect productivity?" David laughed softly, like a king amused by peasantry. "Not if you do it right." That's when I realized he didn't think in faces, he thought in figures. At home, it wasn't much different. Dinner became debriefing sessions. "Charles wants a presentation by Friday," he'd say, stabbing his salad like it owed him money. "Half these departments can't justify their existence." I'd sip my wine and mutter, "We're all just living on borrowed Excel sheets." He'd glance up, half smiling. "Don't be dramatic, darling. You know I'm doing what's necessary." Necessary, another word that had lost all meaning in our marriage. The man I'd fallen in love with, the one who used to text me pictures of sunsets and send dumb memes at midnight, was now more fascinated by fiscal quarters than human emotion. He didn't notice that our date nights had turned into performance reviews. One night, he brought his tablet to bed. I swear that thing was the third person in our relationship. The glow of the screen illuminated his face as he scrolled through yet another department analysis. "Do you ever stop working?" I asked. He smiled without looking away. "Do you ever stop worrying?" "Not when I'm married to an efficiency expert." "Then I'm doing my job," he said, tapping away like he was filing my complaint in the cloud.
At work, his influence spread fast. HR started using his phrases. "We're optimizing workflows," they said, which meant firing people with better words. Departments were pitted against each other like gladiators in a spreadsheet coliseum. Everyone wanted to prove their worth before the next audit. He had this way of framing destruction as improvement. "We're simplifying the structure," he'd say, "flattening the hierarchy." Translation, he was chopping off rungs of the ladder, and no one knew if theirs was next. You know what's funny? He never once came down to our floor to actually meet the team he wanted to streamline, not once. I told him, "You might want to talk to them, get a sense of what we actually do." He gave me that patient, condescending smile reserved for wives and interns. "I've seen the data, love. I know what they do." No, he didn't. He knew what the graphs said, but graphs don't show the night Nina stayed until 3 a.m. debugging a system crash, or the morning Marcus skipped his cousin's wedding to redesign the client portal. Graphs don't show Zara smoothing over angry clients with nothing but empathy and caffeine. Graphs don't bleed. The worst part? He wasn't wrong about some things. The company was bloated. There were people getting paid 6 figures to forward emails, but he couldn't see the difference between inefficiency and humanity. One day, I tried to show him. "Man, take a look at this," I said, pulling up a file on my laptop. "Here's what my team's been handling behind the scenes. Client recovery, system optimization, hell, even the fire alarm fix." He skimmed it like someone reading the back of a cereal box. "That's great, but none of this aligns with our new operational goals." I said slowly, "is to stay in business." He blinked. "And we will once we're leaner." "Lean doesn't mean functional," I shot back. "You can have a 6-pack and still die of dehydration." He frowned, the kind of frown that meant, "Don't push me in public." So I didn't. But inside, I knew this was going to get ugly. Rumors started spreading. People whispered that David was building his empire, that he was the CEO's favorite new toy, that the husband of operations was quietly cutting his way to a promotion. Some said he had the board's ear. Others said he had their wallets. I tried not to listen. You don't want to believe the gossip when it's about your own spouse, but the signs were there. He had lunch with Charles twice in 1 week. He stayed late reviewing metrics, and one day he moved his office to the executive floor, citing workflow efficiency. I asked, "Workflow or view?" He smiled, "Both." It wasn't jealousy, it was suspicion. You could see it in the way he started treating me like an employee instead of a wife. Every conversation felt like a performance review, every dinner like a KPI meeting. When he finally got around to our department, it wasn't to visit, it was to audit. He didn't even look around, didn't notice the worn-out desks or the patchy ceiling tiles we'd fixed ourselves. He just glanced at the reports and said, "So, this is Special Solutions? Cute name." "Yeah," Nina said under her breath, like calling a bomb squad Sparkle Patrol. David smiled that professional smile again. "You've all done great work, but I think we've reached a point where automation can handle most of this." Marcus blinked. "Automation? You mean replacing us with software?" "If that's what efficiency requires," he said. Zara crossed her arms. "And when the software breaks, should we just send it an apology email?" David's eyes flicked toward me, sharp as glass. "I can see why you like them," he said. "They sound just like you." Then he turned and left,
shoes clicking away like a metronome, counting down the company's demise.
That night, I asked him point blank, "What's your end game?" He didn't hesitate. To make this company the most efficient in the industry. At what cost? He looked up from his laptop, genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, people, morale, trust, the part of a company that isn't in a spreadsheet." He sighed, as if I just asked him to care about weather forecasts on Mars. "You always make things emotional. It's business." "It's our business," I said. "Our team, our people." He tilted his head. "Correction, it's my project." There it was, the quiet declaration of war. I stared at him for a long time, realizing that somewhere along the way, we'd switched sides. He thought I was sentimental. I thought he'd forgotten how to be human, and maybe we were both right. By the end of that week, everyone knew what was coming. David's audit report circulated like a death notice. Operational redundancies identified. That was us. Immediate restructuring recommended. That was code for execution scheduled. When he handed me the official directive, my own personal pink slip delivery assignment, I almost admired the audacity. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just handed it over like he was giving me a to-do list. "Fire your team by Monday," he said. That's when I knew we weren't just married anymore. We were opponents in the same company arena. He'd taken his hedge trimmer to everything, budgets, departments, even the bridge between us. And I wasn't about to let him make me the next cut. You ever had to pretend to fail at something you're actually great at? It's like being told to throw a basketball game while your mom's in the stands with a camera. That was us, me and my 8-person dream team, about to perform the saddest office drama since the invention of team-building exercises. We were staging our own professional funeral. Friday morning, I walked into the office with 2 emotions fighting for dominance: guilt and caffeine. Nina had already started the charade. She was at her desk packing her things into a cardboard box labeled "Definitely Not Crying." Marcus was bubble wrapping his coffee mug like it was a family heirloom. Zara was pretending to shred files even though the machine wasn't plugged in. We were acting terribly, but in our defense, corporate America has never been known for its realism. "Okay, team," I said, trying to sound confident while holding a stack of fake termination forms. "Remember, the goal is to look defeated but dignified. We're giving the Academy Award Performance of the Year. Sad but strong." Nina sniffed loudly for effect. "Do I look strong if I sob into a stapler?" "Perfect," I said. "Method acting." Sam, our accountant, stood by the door like a funeral director. "I told my wife I got laid off," he said flatly. "You didn't need to." "She already made me clean the garage," he interrupted. "Commitment," Nina said approvingly. "Respect." We all laughed, but there was a heaviness beneath it. Every chuckle felt like a countdown. Because here's the thing, we weren't just pretending to be fired. We were pretending to be powerless. And that's not easy when you've spent your whole career holding the company together with duct tape and unpaid overtime.
By noon, the act was in full swing. David was making his rounds, tablet in hand, smile polished to corporate perfection. "How's everyone doing?" he asked, as if he'd just handed out free vacations instead of pink slips. "Super," I said, just boxing up my sense of self-worth. He didn't even react. "Good. We'll need your handover documents by 5. Nina gave him a watery smile. "Oh, don't worry. You'll get everything, even the ghosts of our past deliverables." David's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew sarcasm when he heard it. He'd practically raised it, but he moved on, satisfied with his illusion of control. The moment he disappeared into the elevator, Zara exhaled so hard her bangs flew up. "I swear if he smiles one more time, I'm filing a noise complaint against his teeth." Marcus peeked around the corner. "Is he gone for now?" I said, "Okay, phase 2, upload the backup." That's when the real work began. Our fake layoffs had bought us time. While David thought we were moping, we were actually moving files to a hidden server Sam set up under the name wellness_reports29. No one ever checks the wellness folder. HR avoids it like taxes. We documented everything.
The bugs fixed, the client saves, the cost reductions, the all-nighters. We backed up screenshots, receipts, code versions, internal praise emails, every breadcrumb of proof that cutting us would gut the company. "This is corporate warfare," Nina said, typing furiously. "We're not just saving jobs, we're saving history." Marcus leaned back, sipping from a beer disguised as a coffee cup. "And revenge tastes like Excel formulas." We worked quietly, efficiently, invisible as ever, but this time it was deliberate. We'd become a ghost department, haunting the company with competence. By 3 p.m., the act hit its emotional peak. I walked into the break room to find Zara dramatically handing out leftover office snacks like she was on Survivor. "Take what you need," she said solemnly. "Trail mix, chips, dignity." "Bless you," Nina whispered, grabbing 2 granola bars. "I swear if we hadn't all been in danger of unemployment, we could have won an Emmy." But then David came back. I spotted his reflection in the coffee pot before I saw him. He walked in, shoes clicking like judgment itself. "Everyone still here?" he asked sweetly. "Just finishing up?" I said, forcing a smile. "Wouldn't want to leave any loose ends." His smile was surgical. "Good. I appreciate your cooperation." He glanced at the boxes. "You've been thorough." "Oh, we believe in closure," I said. "Complete, meticulous closure." If he noticed the extra monitor cables or the fact that half our screens were turned slightly away from him, he didn't show it. He left again, confident he'd just witnessed a clean exit. "Jesus," Nina muttered when the elevator doors closed. "He's like Mary Poppins with a pink slip fetish." "Stay calm," I said. "We're almost done. We just need to finalize the dossier." Sam nodded. "Already compiling. You'll have the master file before 5. "Perfect," I said. "Let's end this week with the fakest layoff in company history." By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, our office looked like a scene from a post-apocalyptic sitcom. Empty desks, unplugged lamps, a few boxes stacked dramatically near the door. The only thing missing was a sad acoustic soundtrack. I stood there for a second, taking it all in. This was our battlefield, and it looked heartbreakingly ordinary. I turned to the team. "You guys did good. Now, go home. Act devastated. And for the love of God, don't post anything on LinkedIn." Nina saluted with her coffee mug. "Operation Pity Party, commence." Marcus gave me a thumbs up. "If he thinks we're gone, maybe he'll stop breathing down our necks." Zara smirked. "Or he'll try to replace us with robots." "Let him try," I said. "We built this system so even the robots would call us for help." They laughed, and for a brief second, the exhaustion lifted. After everyone left, I sat alone in the quiet. The fake resignation letters were neatly arranged on David's desk. The lights flickered once, like even the building knew it was witnessing something stupidly poetic. I picked up my phone and called Charles. He answered on the second ring, voice tired. "Please tell me this isn't another budget request." "Nope," I said. "Just letting you know David's efficiency phase is in full swing. My team's officially out, at least on paper." He was silent for a long moment. "And off paper, still working." I said, "We've got proof of impact, client data, efficiency metrics, everything we need to show the board he's about to blow up their golden goose." Charles sighed. The sound of a man trying to choose between loyalty and legal exposure. "You're sure about this?" "As sure as a married woman can be about sabotaging her husband's audit," I said. He chuckled despite himself. "God help you if he finds out." "Yeah," I said. "God and HR." "Fine," he said. "Finally, I'll set up a board meeting for Monday. Be ready to show them what you've got." "Always am." When the call ended, I sat there for a while staring at David's office door. I loved him once for his drive, his precision, his belief that things could always be improved. Now, I wasn't sure if he could even tell the difference between improving and destroying. But I'd be damned if I let him cut down the people who'd saved this place time and again. This wasn't just about jobs anymore.
It was about pride. That night, I drove home later than usual. The city lights blurred through the windshield. Each one a little reminder that the world doesn't care about corporate wars. It just keeps moving. When I walked in, David was already home, sitting at the kitchen counter with a glass of wine and his ever-present tablet. He looked up. "You look tired." "Productivity fatigue," I said. "It's contagious." He didn't even smirk. "Good. That means you're doing your part." I wanted to tell him I'd done more than my part, that I'd quietly built a defense he couldn't spreadsheet his way out of. But instead, I smiled. "Yeah," I said, "everything's wrapped up." "Perfect," he said, sipping his wine. "See, you're learning." Oh, I was learning. All right, learning that sometimes the smartest move isn't fighting the system, it's making the system think it's winning while you build something better underneath.
Saturday morning, the group chat was alive. Nina uploaded final backup. Feels weird pretending to be unemployed. Marcus got drunk pretending to mourn myself. Very method. Zara: David texted me, wishing you luck on your next journey. I replied, "See you Monday, Sam." God bless sarcasm. I smiled at my phone. They were ready. We were all ready. This was more than just rebellion. It was reclamation. A declaration of worth disguised as defeat. By the time Monday rolled around, we'd be standing in front of the board exposing David's efficiency for what it really was. Reckless ambition dressed in a PowerPoint. But for now, I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling, fans spinning lazily above me, and whispered to no one in particular, "Showtime." And for the first time all week, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. There are Mondays, and then there are legendary Mondays. The kind that could either end your career or make you the star of every whispered hallway story for years. This one was shaping up to be both. I arrived at the office early, wearing the one suit I reserve for tax audits, funerals, and corporate showdowns. You know the one. Charcoal gray, slightly too tight in the shoulders, but makes you look like you've got your life together, even when your soul is on fire. I'd even polished my shoes, which for me is the equivalent of lighting a prayer candle. David was already there. Of course he was. He lived for mornings like this. Presentation day, performance day, judgment day. He stood at the head of the boardroom table, tablet in hand, tapping away with the calm menace of a Bond villain updating her evil PowerPoint. His slides were already projected onto the massive screen. Efficiency wins. Q3. I almost clapped. It was like watching a magician set up her trick before you reveal where she hid the cards. I took my seat across from him. He gave me a polite nod, the kind reserved for someone you once loved but now only tolerate because murder is frowned upon in the workplace. "Morning," he said sweetly. "Morning," I replied. "Nice slides. I can practically smell the PowerPoint ambition from here." He didn't even look up. You know what they say, good data speaks for itself. So does karma. His jaw tightened. "Don't make this personal." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, smiling like a person holding the detonator to her own survival. At exactly 9 a.m., the board members started filing in. You could always tell their status by what they carried. The newer ones clutched notepads like shields. The veterans walked in with nothing but coffee and cynicism. Charles, our CEO, came in last. His face the usual mix of exhaustion and quiet regret for every decision that had led him here. "Morning, everyone," he said. "Let's make it a quick one." Quick one. Classic CEO phrase. Translation: I've already tuned out, but I'll pretend to care for 45 minutes. David began his presentation like he was conducting a symphony of self-importance. His voice was smooth, his tone controlled, and his laser pointer moved across the screen like it had a master's degree in smugness. "Over the last quarter," he began, "we've identified inefficiencies totaling $1.4 million in potential savings. Streamlining key departments will allow us to allocate resources to innovation.
I swear, he said innovation like it was a sacred word that cured diseases. I looked around the table. Most of the board nodded along, hypnotized by the bar charts and his flawless presentation cadence. He was good, dangerously good. He flipped to the next slide, which listed all the departments he'd optimized. Then he paused dramatically before landing on ours. And this, he said, is the Operations Special Solutions Team. Their functions, while once essential, have now been automated or absorbed into other divisions. I could feel my pulse quicken. The betrayal was so polished it could have been a TED Talk. He continued, removing redundant roles will not only save costs, but simplify oversight and reporting. I resisted the urge to stand up and yell, "Lady, we're the reason you still have a company to oversimplify." Instead, I leaned back in my chair, waiting.
When he finished his spiel, Charles nodded slowly. "Impressive work, David. I'll admit this kind of analysis takes guts." He smiled modestly, like someone who just finished robbing a bank but wanted credit for the architecture. "Thank you. I believe efficiency is the key to growth." "That's one philosophy," I said. All eyes turned to me. Charles raised an eyebrow. "You've got something to add, I assume." I smiled. "Just a small demonstration." David's polite smile froze. "Demonstration?" "Yeah," I said, standing up and straightening my blazer. "Since we're talking about efficiency, I thought it'd be useful to see what it looks like when it actually works." The room went quiet. You could feel the shift, the energy of people who suddenly realized they might be witnessing something historic or career-ending. At precisely 9:15, the double doors opened and walked my team. 8 people who'd supposedly been terminated, marching in with laptops, coffee, and the kind of smug confidence that comes from knowing you're about to ruin someone's narrative. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Rohr from the board actually blinked twice, like his bifocals were lying to him. "Weren't these folks fired?" I said, cheerfully. "That was the rumor." David's smile had vanished completely. His face was now a mix of confusion and dread, like someone who just realized the magician's assistant is holding the real saw. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tightening. "This," I said, "is the part where the truth interrupts your PowerPoint." I gestured for the team to take their seats along the wall. "Allow me to reintroduce the Special Solutions Team. Unofficially, the group that's been keeping this company functional while the rest of us argue about synergy." The board looked interested now. Charles folded his arms, eyebrows raised. "Go on." "See David's report here. Very impressive charts, by the way. Mentions inefficiencies, but what it doesn't mention are the results those inefficiencies produced." I clicked my laptop, projecting our report onto the screen beside his. Slide 1. Results you forgot existed. The first graph was simple. Client retention rates over the last 2 years. When we took over, I said, our client satisfaction score was 62%. Now it's 93%. That's not magic. That's Nina, who fixed the CRM system when IT told us it was hopeless. Nina gave a small wave. Next slide. Cost savings. We cut overhead by $740,000 by optimizing vendor contracts. Marcus and Zara handled that. Marcus leaned back, smug grin in full effect. "You're welcome." And when our flagship app crashed last winter, guess who rebuilt the back end overnight? That's Sam and Eduardo. Sam shrugged. I had nothing better to do. Laughter rippled through the room. David's tablet froze mid-tap. "And remember the time our entire security system nearly got us sued because of a compliance error?" I asked. "We fixed that too." Quietly, I paused, letting it sink in. So if efficiency means firing the people who save your company from disaster, maybe we should redefine the word.
The silence that followed was so thick you could spread it on toast. Then, out of nowhere, Jerome, the old-school board member who looked like he'd been around since typewriters, spoke up. "You fired the people who actually saved us." David tried to recover.
It's not about individuals, it's about structure, systems. Jerome cut him off. Systems don't work without people who give a damn. I couldn't have scripted it better myself. Charles leaned forward, steepling his fingers. So, let me get this straight. David, your report recommended eliminating the department responsible for the majority of operational savings in the past 2 years. He hesitated. That's a misinterpretation of the data. Or, I said, a selective reading of it. His eyes darted toward me, a warning flicker. But the board wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at my team. The real story was unfolding. And for once, we weren't invisible. Miss Park, one of the board's newer members, turned to Nina. You run the coding systems, right? Yes, Nina said, leaning forward. And I also volunteer at the company's coding camp for kids. That's where I met your daughter. Actually, she's got a great head for logic. Miss Park blanked. Oh, you're that Nina. Nina grinned. The one and only. I didn't even need to say anything after that. Connections speak louder than data. One by one, my team became real to them. Faces, not numbers. The woman who calmed angry clients. The designer whose work boosted sales. The accountant who found missing funds. And just like that, David's entire efficiency argument started collapsing like a bad Jenga tower. When I wrapped up, I turned back to Charles. So, that's where we stand. You can keep chasing spreadsheets, or you can keep the people who make the numbers mean something. Charles rubbed his chin, impressed, but pretending not to be. You've made your point. David, desperate, tried to salvage what was left. Look, no one's denying the team's contributions, but restructuring was necessary. Mr. Lang, the quietest board member until now, interrupted. Efficiency without effectiveness is just a tidy failure. Oof, that one hit harder than coffee after an all-nighter. David froze, color draining from his face. I swear I saw him blink twice, calculating whether to double down or surrender. He chose neither. He just said quietly, I'll revisit the data. Charles leaned back. You do that. In the meantime, this team stays. I could have kissed the man. As the board members started packing up, Charles turned to me. That was gutsy. Guts? You're stupid? I asked. Little of both, he said with a grin. Good job. When the room finally emptied, David stood by the window, staring out at the skyline like he could fix it with sheer willpower. I walked over, hands in my pockets. You okay? He didn't look at me. You embarrassed me in front of the board. I defended my team. They're the same thing. I let out a dry laugh. And that's the problem, man. He turned to face me, eyes cold but glassy. You think you won something today? No, I said softly. I reminded them what winning actually looks like. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he picked up his tablet and walked out without another word. As the door closed, I exhaled for the first time in hours. The room still smelled faintly of tension and burnt ego. My team trickled in, waiting for my cue. Did we win? Marcus asked. I grinned. We survived. That's better. Nina punched the air. Hell yeah, corporate survival mode. We all laughed, the sound echoing through the empty boardroom. It wasn't just relief, it was triumph, because for once, we weren't invisible. And for the first time, David wasn't untouchable.
They say silence after a storm feels peaceful. But that's a lie. It's not peace. It's the sound of everyone pretending they didn't just witness a train crash in business casual. The Monday boardroom meeting had ended with polite applause and quiet panic. The special solutions team was officially back from the dead. David's PowerPoint empire was crumbling. And I was suddenly the person people whispered about in the hallway with phrases like, "Did you see that?" and "I thought they were married." I walked out of that boardroom like I just diffused a bomb with a butter knife. My heart was still thumping, my suit clinging to me like guilt, and the air felt thick enough to chew. My team followed behind me, all smirks and wide eyes. Nina whispered, "That was epic," while Marcus said, "You looked like George Clooney if you worked in HR."
I grinned, but I was too wired to enjoy it. The calm after chaos is never real calm. It's just the eye of the hurricane where you know the other side is waiting to smack you again. And that other side had a name: David. By the time I got to my office, he'd already left a note on my desk. No email, no Slack message, no "we need to talk." Just an old-fashioned handwritten note on company stationery. It read, "We need to discuss boundaries tonight. D, boundaries." That's married people code for someone's about to cry or throw furniture. I sat there for a while, staring at the note like it might self-destruct. Zara popped her head in. "You okay?" "Define." "Okay, you survived a board meeting ambush and humiliated your husband in front of upper management. That's either heroic or suicidal. Probably both." I shrugged. "Depends how dinner goes." She raised an eyebrow. "You're still going home?" "It's either that or sleep in my car, and the car doesn't have Pinot Noir." Zara gave me a sympathetic smile. "Well, if he kills you, we'll dedicate a coffee mug in your honor. Make sure it says she died doing the right thing." Sort of. At home, the air was colder than the office AC. David was sitting on the couch, tablet in hand, like it was a stress ball. He didn't look up when I walked in. I kicked off my shoes and stood there feeling like a trespasser in my own living room. "You embarrassed me," he said finally, his voice calm but sharp enough to shave ice. "You almost dismantled my team," I said. He looked up, eyes dark. "I did what was necessary." "There's that word again," I said. "Necessary? You keep using it like it's holy scripture." "It is," he snapped. "Someone has to make the hard decisions." I leaned against the wall. "You're mistaking destruction for leadership, and you're mistaking sentiment for strategy." "Sentiment keeps people showing up," I said. "Strategy without heart is just a spreadsheet with a death wish." His laugh was short, humorless. "You always think you're so clever. You think the board will protect you now? You humiliated me. You made me look incompetent." "I didn't make you look anything," I said evenly. "You did that by trying to cut the people who actually hold this place together." For a second, I thought he might throw the tablet at me. His jaw flexed, his hands trembled just slightly. He rattled like a blender, fury and fear spinning together. Then he stood, smoothing his suit, regaining that mask of calm efficiency. "I'll recover," he said quietly. "I always do." That was the thing about David. He wasn't just ambitious, he was relentless. If he fell, he'd make sure someone else cushioned the landing. "I know," I said. "That's what scares me." He gave me a long, hard look. "You think you've won something?" "No," I said. "I just stopped losing." He turned away, grabbed his bag, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up." I didn't. The next morning at work, you could feel it. The tension, the gossip, the electric hum of people pretending they weren't watching. The boardroom fallout had spread faster than a group chat leak. Charles called me into his office. He looked like a man who'd slept 4 hours and regretted every one of them. "So," he said, "hell of a show yesterday." "Sorry," I said. "Didn't mean to turn it into a reality episode." He smiled tiredly. "Don't apologize. The board loved it. You reminded them that we still have humans here, not just balance sheets." "Glad to hear it," I said. "But," he added, "David's not taking it well." "Yeah, I noticed. He's requested access to the full financial reports for your department. Claims he wants to understand the discrepancies." I raised an eyebrow. Translation: he's going hunting. Charles sighed. "I can't deny him access." "Let him have it," I told Sam. He raised an eyebrow. "You sure? He'll see the breadcrumbs." "That's the point," I said. "We're leaving him the trail." He smirked. "God, you're good at this." "I'm married to him," I said. "You learn defense mechanisms." Around 5, I decided to swing by his war room. The door was half open, lights spilling out onto the hallway like corporate stage lighting. He was hunched over his tablet, hair slightly out of place. Rare for him, which meant he was stressed. "Long day?" I asked.
He didn't look up. "I'm fine." "You look fine," I said, leaning against the doorframe, in the "I'm about to delete someone's career" kind of way. He sighed. "I just want answers." "To what?" "To why your department's numbers don't align with the projected cost reductions." "Maybe because my department doesn't rely on fantasy math." He glared up at me. "You think this is funny, a little?" I said, "You're auditing your wife for revenge? That's sitcom gold." He stood, tablet clutched tight. "I'm not your enemy." "Then stop acting like one." For a split second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Hesitation, maybe guilt, but it was gone as fast as it came. He stepped closer, voice low. "You humiliated me. You made me look reckless in front of the people who decide our futures." I met his gaze. "No, man, you did that when you stopped listening to the people doing the work." He stared at me for a moment, then turned back to his files. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. I smiled. If I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I could retire. When I walked back to my office, Zara was waiting with 2 coffees. "How bad?" she asked. "He's digging," I said. "Deep." "Should we worry?" "No," I said. "We've already set the trap. He just hasn't realized it yet." Zara raised her coffee in a toast to patience. "Then, to stealth," I said. We clinked cups. By the time the sun set, the office had emptied out, leaving that strange stillness only corporate buildings have at night. The hum of servers, the faint echo of ambition bouncing off glass walls. I stood by the window, watching David's silhouette in the conference room, still moving, still searching. He was relentless, but so was I. The calm after the chaos wasn't peace. It was prep time. Because the next storm wasn't coming from the board. It was coming from him. And this time, I'd be ready.
You can always tell when someone's hiding something by the way they hover over a spreadsheet like it's a diary. David had started coming into the office after hours, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., the kind of dedication that doesn't smell like loyalty. It smells like plotting. Nina from IT was the first to flag it. "Someone's logging into secure servers in the middle of the night," she said. "Guess who?" I didn't even need to guess. David's credentials had been used to open archived vendor files, financial audits, and one mysteriously renamed folder, Vanguard Consultation Drafts. That was the same vendor name we'd seen pop up before, back when other departments got restructured and those same companies mysteriously contracted Vanguard for recovery support. Nina ran her usual digital witchcraft and found subtle edits in our project parameters. Small enough not to break anything, but big enough to make results look off. It was elegant sabotage. "He's creating the problem," Sam said, his tone dry as a tax memo, so he can sell the cure. I stared at the monitor. A self-made crisis with a premium solution attached. "Classic corporate snake move," Marcus muttered. "You married that?" "Yeah," I said. "Turns out I like fixer-uppers." We pulled every trace, login, vendor records, digital footprints, and the story started to take shape. David had done this before at 3 prior companies. Same pattern. He'd trim a team, manufacture a disaster, then rescue the company through a conveniently timed consulting partner, Vanguard, or some clone version of it. "He's not an efficiency expert," Zara said. "He's a professional arsonist with a business card." So we set our own trap: cameras, timestamp trackers, mirrored servers. We weren't just collecting data, we were building a case. Because when someone's whole career is built on burning bridges, eventually they light one too close to home. And if David wanted to play savior again, we'd be waiting with the receipts, the footage, and the match he used to start it all. There's a special kind of joy in watching a plan come together. The slow, delicious kind that feels like karma in a tailored suit. For weeks, David had been laying his little breadcrumbs, midnight logins, shadow edits, those conveniently accidental data mismatches. He thought he was orchestrating another efficiency miracle. What he didn't know was that we'd turned his grand performance into a live-streamed confession. It started on a Thursday night. I was in my office with Sam, surrounded by enough coffee cups to qualify as a recycling hazard. The hidden cameras were rolling, the mirrored server was waiting. David's access credentials pinged at 1:27 a.m. like clockwork. "There he is," Sam whispered. On the feed, David glided into the operations wing in dress shoes. Because of course he did. No one breaks into a data system in sneakers. He typed fast, efficient, practiced. His screen mirrored onto ours. Subtle parameter tweaks, document renames, a sneaky upload to a folder labeled Vendor Support Proposal. "Vanguard," Sam muttered. "He's practically signing his own indictment." "Yeah," I said, "but with formatting and bullet points." We had everything: timestamps, screen recordings, audio, even a crystal clear shot of him whispering into his phone. "We'll make them need us." The phrasing alone could have been framed in a museum exhibit titled Hubris. Exit A.
The next morning, I walked into work like a person holding the ace of spades. David was in full swing. Fresh suit, smug energy, probably thinking about the presentation he'd give tomorrow to fix the system he'd just broken. Friday came fast. The boardroom was set. David opened his laptop with the confidence of someone about to collect applause. His presentation was titled Project Winton Recovery Initiative Vanguard Partnership Proposal. He clicked through charts showing fabricated problems, system slowdowns, data errors, productivity drops. "Our solution," he announced, "is a vendor partnership that will stabilize our infrastructure at a projected cost of $2.3 million. I waited until he finished his pitch, then stood slowly. "Fascinating, but I think the board deserves a second opinion." He frowned. "Excuse me?" I connected my laptop to the projector. "Let's take a look at what Project Winton actually looks like today." I ran the demo. Everything worked perfectly. Flawless performance. 0 errors. You could have heard a pin drop. Then I clicked to the next slide. Footage of David late at night accessing the system, altering numbers, whispering to his mysterious partner. Gasps. Actual gasps. Charles's face went pale. Jerome muttered, "Good God." David froze, every ounce of corporate polish evaporating. "This is taken out of context." Sam, sitting in the back, stood and said, "Funny, because the context is time-stamped, backed up, and cross-verified." I clicked one final slide. Payment logs showing his communication trail with Vanguard Consulting LLC, including his personal authorization request. He lunged forward, reaching for my laptop, but before he could make contact, Malik from security blessed that man, stepped in, hand on his arm, calm as you please. "I think that's enough, sir." His face went white. "You set me up." I smiled. "You set yourself up. I just provided lighting and sound." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Charles finally spoke, his voice level but cold. "David, I'll be turning this over to legal immediately. You can wait for further instruction, or you can leave now." He hesitated, shaken, then gathered his things. The shoes that once clicked with confidence now sounded like guilt echoing down the hallway. When the door closed, Nina whispered, "Damn, that was cinematic." Marcus raised an imaginary glass to poetic justice served in high definition. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not the fake kind that comes from compliance, but the real kind that comes when truth finally punches through the PowerPoint. The thing about justice is it never arrives wearing a cape. It usually shows up in a gray suit with coffee breath and a legal pad. By Monday morning, the company's lawyer, Heather, had already said phrases like forensic accounting, fraudulent activity, and, my personal favorite, termination effective immediately. Those are corporate words for, we're about to air this laundry in public, and it's not going to smell like lavender. David's downfall spread through the office faster than a free lunch email. People whispered his name like he was a ghost that still haunted the shared drive.
HR locked his account, security changed his access, and his glossy portrait was taken down from the executive wing before noon. By Tuesday, his parking space was reserved for visitors. I watched all of it with a strange cocktail of relief and regret. He'd been my husband, my rival, my storm. I didn't hate him, not really, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel poetic to see his empire collapse under the weight of his own spreadsheets. Charles called me into his office that afternoon. He had the look of a man who just dodged an SEC investigation. "Hell of a week," he said. "Understatement of the decade." He smiled. "The board's impressed. They've asked me to make your position official, head of a new department." I blinked. "New department?" He nodded. "Strategic Integrity Division. Your team stays intact, bigger budget, more authority, and maybe," he added with a grin, "a lock on your office door next time." I laughed. "So we're in charge of making sure the company doesn't hire another David." "Exactly," he said. "Consider it hazard pay for surviving one." We toasted that night in our new office, a real office, not a repurposed storage closet. The lights worked. The coffee machine didn't hiss like an angry cat. Even the carpet looked like it had feelings. Zara poured champagne into mismatched mugs. "To teams who save companies but never get credit until now," Nina raised hers. "And to bosses who pretend not to panic while absolutely panicking." "Accurate," I said. Sam added, "And to accountants who get to file karma under assets." We laughed until it didn't feel like laughter. It felt like release. All those late nights, the fake layoffs, the silent panic finally paid off. I looked around at the faces of the people who'd trusted me through all of it, who followed me into the madness and came out the other side stronger. "You know," I said, "David was right about one thing." Nina snorted. "That efficiency is a muscle that some people need trimming," I said. "Just turns out it wasn't us." Marcus grinned. "Damn right." Zara raised her glass again. "To surviving the storm and thriving after it." I said, "The next morning I saw it. Someone had sent me a screenshot of David's LinkedIn profile. His new headline read, 'Former efficiency executive seeking new opportunities, preferably less legal.'" I laughed out loud. It was perfect. Tragic, ironic, and completely on brand. I didn't wish him failure, exactly. I just hoped he'd finally realize that efficiency without empathy isn't leadership, it's demolition. As for me, I wasn't invisible anymore. Not the quiet fixer, not the shadow manager. I was officially the person who turned a staged downfall into a promotion. I walked into the office, past my team's desks, and smiled. "All right, heroes," I said, "back to work. Let's make integrity fashionable again." Nina raised an eyebrow. "You mean unpaid overtime?" "Yeah," I said, smirking, but with better coffee. And as the laughter filled the room, I thought this right here was what efficiency should look like. People who gave a damn working together without fear of being optimized out of existence. The storm was over. The calm was real this time. And for once, the spreadsheet told the truth.